going on?
Are you ready to introduce first?
Sure, I'm going to introduce the topic at the end. So the next topic is Myolink, based in the human wireless neuroprosthetic controller. Kathy Martin, Jimmy Lee, Andrew Kim, Yi Chow, Jim Walsh, and Baram Shafi, Department of Electrical and Bioengineering, Northeastern University, Boston, Massachusetts.
Are you ready for an exciting presentation? Yes. Okay. So these are wonderful students that I advised over the past year, and they came up with a very exciting result. And I will give the floor to Kathleen to talk about that a little bit more. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Kathleen Martin, and I'm here with my teammates Andy, Jimmy, and Shane. Our advisor is Professor Baram Shafi, and we are here presenting on behalf of Northeastern University. And the proposal that we have today is Myolink, which is an EMG-based interhuman wireless neuroprosthetic controller. And so what you're about to see is some really exciting research which makes it possible to induce motion from one person to another wirelessly. And so we were inspired by a video that we saw online by a company called Backyard Brains and their device, the human-to-human interface, where you connect two people using a single pair of electrodes, and when one person makes a motion like this, then the other person will make that same motion involuntarily. And so we were really fascinated by this concept, and we decided to look into a series of other related devices and research in this area. And so what we found were wheelchairs which utilize eye tracking technology, or verbal commands, or robotic arms that were controlled using brain signals. And so we decided to go with this idea of not just inducing motion in an otherwise stationary object, such as a wheelchair, but instead inducing motion in a human person. So we were really excited to explore these different possibilities and to come up with something new and improved to add to the existing technology that was available. So the question is, how exactly did we do this? So we are going to dive into the technical aspects of our device and the design process that went into it. And so we first decided to purchase the Backyard Brains device to verify its operation and to see how we can improve upon it and how it works. And so in this video, we have our two teammates, Erin on the left and Yale on the right. And so here, Erin is acting as the controller. So as you'll see in a moment, when Erin contracts her arm in this motion, then you'll see that Yale involuntarily makes that same motion. But it appears to be abrupt, a little unpleasant, and uncomfortable. And so what we decided to do is we wanted to have strict control over the magnitude of the output motion so that we could have this positive user experience. And another thing to note is that these two people have to be very close to each other in proximity for this to work, because it is a wired device. And so we decided to transition the system from wired to wireless so that we can open up some opportunities by eliminating space as a limiting factor. And so next we decided to verify the operation of the TENS unit to see how changing the amplitude of the signal would affect the output. And so as you can see here, my teammate seated here, Jimmy, he has electrodes attached to his right arm, and he is controlling the TENS unit using his left hand. And when he sets the TENS unit dial to a high setting, then he experiences this abrupt motion. It appears a bit painful, unpleasant, like how we saw in the prior video. But when he sets it to a lower position, then it's this more gradual motion, more comfortable. And so what we decided to do in our iteration was to implement a range of values so that a user can adjust the TENS unit to a comfortable motion incrementally. And so we also decided in our iteration of Myolink to eliminate these mechanical dials and instead push controls to the software layer using digital potentiometers. And so after discussing our improvements, this is a high-level overview of our final device. So what I'm going to do is walk through the workflow and then dive into the details of each of these control blocks. And so here on the left, we'll move left to right. So here on the left, we have the two sets of electrodes. So these electrodes obtain the EMG signal from the controlling person. And so those EMG signals are passed into a custom PCB which we made. And here we filter noise, we amplify the signal, and we trace the upper bound of the signal to obtain the informative part of the nerve contraction event. And so after this pre-processing, the signal is then passed into the computer where it is analyzed by a MATLAB script. And this MATLAB script, it has a threshold value which we determined experimentally. And what this threshold value does is when the signal comes in, if it is higher than this threshold, it says yes, a muscle contraction event did occur, otherwise it did not. And these dials that you see here on the screen, these are the digitized version of the mechanical dials which were previously on the TENS unit. So this was all part of our pushing to the software layer kind of concept. And this MATLAB script communicates wirelessly over a Bluetooth low energy interface with the Arduino, which is on the board you see there at the left side. And this is also where those digital potentiometers are positioned so that they can adjust the output of the TENS unit. And then also here is the TENS unit and the electrodes that are used for passing the resulting signal into the second person. And so we are going to discuss now a brief overview of the biology behind the operation. So when a neuron activates, it releases a chemical onto a muscle, which causes that muscle to contract. But what Myolink does is it artificially stimulates these neurons by increasing the electrical amplitude so we can induce stronger contractions. And the electrode placement is key to a comfortable and targeted muscle contraction. And the electrodes that we use had a gel layer to minimize the skin impedance so that we could obtain as clear as possible of an EMG signal from the controlling person. And the nerves that we chose to target were the ulnar, the median, and the radial nerves. So these were primarily chosen because, first of all, they are far from the heart, which is really important as far as safety when we are experimenting with this. Additionally, they are very close to the surface of the skin, so we could access them using non-invasive methods. We just had electrodes that we would attach to the skin surface. Also, these nerves have very distinct and observable output motions. So this included the wrist flexion and the forearm pronation. So we figured as far as demonstrating the operation, these were very observable motions. And so this is a side-by-side photos of the electrode placements on persons 1 and 2. And so the electrodes were positioned in what is called a bipolar configuration. And the goal of this configuration is to maximize the signal-to-noise ratio of the EMG signals. And so what happens is those two EMG signals are received and then passed into an instrumentation amplifier where the common noise is subtracted. And important to note is that the two users have identical positioning of the electrodes on their arms so that we can have this one-to-one replication of motion, which is essential to the overarching goal of what Myolink is designed to do. And so to discuss a bit about the signal processing behind the pre-processing that of the incoming EMG signals. So we designed a custom-made PCB for performing signal processing, which includes 3 channels, 1 for each of the nerve groups. And in our demonstration, we utilized 2, although we are capable of accommodating up to 3. So the goal was to eliminate noise, to amplify the signal, and to trace the upper bound of the signal. So the first stage is this differential amplifier, where the common noise between the EMG signals is eliminated and subtracted, and it amplifies the signal by a gain factor of 4. And then that is followed by a bandpass filter, which eliminates noise due to the environment, and applies a gain of 150. And then finally, an envelope gain traces the upper bound of the signal and provides a gain of 20. So from end to end, this signal is amplified from the millivolts level to the volts level, so that it is then readable by the Arduino microcontroller. And so this is the TENS unit. The very long name is the Transcutaneous Electrical Nerve Stimulation Unit, TENS for short. But this is the key device in applying the signal at the second person. And so the dials on the TENS unit included pulse duration, frequency, and amplitude. but we are most interested in controlling the amplitude since this was directly correlated to the output motion at the second person. And so, as you can see, these mechanical dials were replaced by the digital potentiometers shown here so that we can control the amplitude wirelessly using an SPI protocol. And so now Andy's going to discuss a bit more about the PCB design and the software side of Myolink.
Thank you for that, Kat. So yeah, I will be talking about some more specifics about the components that we used. Here we have a 4-layer PCB that we custom made. As you can see, it's segregated into different portions of the circuit in order to support different muscle groups. The design focus for when we were creating the PCB was to ensure signal integrity and to make sure that amplification and filtration is being consistent throughout the entire circuit. Throughout the entire circuit. And as you can see, this is how we attach different electrodes into our custom PCB using that input. So the Arduino is the bridge that we used to manage the software and to also manage the BLE connection. We chose the Arduino Nano because of its small form factor and the fact that it has Bluetooth Low Energy built in as a module, and so that's why we chose the Arduino Nano. So this is the software GUI that we created in tandem with our Myolink device. The software is responsible for managing the Bluetooth connection as well as sending over the EMG trigger event when the first controller triggers a muscle movement. The MATLAB script then sends that trigger event over to the second person, which enacts a voltage for 1 second on that specific muscle group that we're targeting. As you can see, we replaced the dials with software GUIs, and this helps us differentiate the voltage that we're applying at the second person. So we chose Bluetooth Low Energy because it fits perfectly with what we're trying to solve with our device. We want to be sending multiple different variables for the different muscle groups, and also we want to send it intermittently. This rules out Bluetooth Classic because there's a lot more overhead, and so that's why we chose Bluetooth Low Energy for our wireless protocol. So this is the resulting signal workflow of our entire device. This is person 1 who's going to be deemed the controller, and when they flex their arms, that EMG signal is sent to our custom PCB, where it is amplified and is filtered the right way. That PCB then sends to the Arduino Nano the fact that a muscle trigger event has occurred, and that receiving Arduino Nano will then take that data and send it to the TENS unit, which will ultimately enact the voltage onto the second person.
Okay, so here is a demonstration showing the final operation of the Myolink device. So as you can see, I'm standing here in the background, and I'm making those 2 unique motions, the wrist flexion and the forearm pronation. And when I make these motions, Jimmy, who is standing far from me and is blindfolded so that he cannot predict or see what I am doing, he makes those same motions involuntarily using this wireless connection. And so in this next clip, we have this more up-close image of the user interface. And so our teammate Shane is adjusting the MATLAB GUI dials based on Jimmy's verbal feedback of his comfort level. And once again, Jimmy, his output motion is more dramatic or more gradual based on the positioning of those dials. And so this was a very exciting outcome for us because it proves that human-to-human wireless control is possible using a type of technology such as Myolink.
This is a completely voluntary action.
Yes, completely involuntary, yes.
So to conclude this presentation about the Myolink device, we want to reiterate that we created a custom PCB as well as a custom GUI in order to utilize the TENS unit and the Backyard Brains device the best way. And we believe that this has immense number of applications because of the fact that we're able to translate movement to another person. Some of the applications that we believe in is physical therapy, disease recovery tracking, rehabilitation, and patient monitoring. And we believe that there is more future work in order to drive this research into like more wearables. But we believe that this is a substantial step into BCI and human interfaces. Thank you. So we'd also like to open the floor for questions or comments, if you guys have any.
Anyone have any questions? Pretty interesting topic.
You can also show the final demonstration.
Well, I'm going to ask a crazy question. If I were to attach the electrodes to my right hand, would I be able to control my left hand?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the use cases that we thought of if a patient suffered a stroke and they lost movement or control of one arm or one hand, like one side of the body, that we'd be able to attach this device to both of their arms and have a congruent movement with just control of one of their arms.
That's cool. Now, a tricky question. You guys supposed to wire me and demonstrate this on me.
Yes.
But wisely, you said no, probably you thought I'm going to get a heart attack because of the discomfort and so on, security and health issues. Why? Why did you choose that?
We tried it
Not to
out.
wire me on.
So we tried it earlier this week and wired it improperly on me, and it was probably one of the more painful things that's happened in the recent month to me. So in the event that we do mess up, it's not a pleasant experience.
You know, I tell you this, the cure for this is always the following. Put 8 drops of Tabasco sauce. No, really. In a cup with 1 teaspoon of vinegar and 1 teaspoon of salt. Stir, put it in the microwave for 20 seconds, and then use an eye drop. Put 2 in your left eye, 2 in your right eye. The pain is going to be so bad that this is going to be very comfy.
In any case, one of the applications that they didn't mention that perhaps is also be for the fun. Just imagine in the future. I don't think that it's going to happen very soon, but being a born dancer myself for a long time, just imagine that you can actually dance like this, and then Kathleen can mimic exactly what I do. That would be another fun situation where perhaps I'm not doing right now, but from the finger motion and so forth, you can actually do all kind of dancing as well. So that is another possible future. Perhaps we're not alive at that.
Don't waste your time on that application.
Yes, sir.
Since you mentioned that the GUI that you can control the score of the signal is stronger, have you reached like which one is for human comfort?
So the values that we have on the GUI right now are like experimental values, and they're more or less for like me specifically, my comfort levels. Where like the low values that we set are like essentially like the lowest that I'll be able to feel it, and the highest is like the most I'll be able to tolerate. We can go higher. In fact, like some people probably need to go higher. It's probably like a variable thing for comfort depending on the person. But yeah, it's just like experimental values that we like chose to stop from going to the hospital.
And that brings me to the question about is there's error rate, like maybe the signal is coming by mistake, or there's guarantee that the signal will be accurate.
So that's also like more. That was a little more like that was calibrated to CAT as well. So I think the threshold were like, so if she made like any small fidgeting, it wouldn't trigger. She had to make a pretty significant like muscle movement for the trigger to pass over to the second user.
Also to add on to that is the electrode position is really important when avoiding any kind of false positives or something like that. So that's why we had to be very precise about where we positioned the electrodes. And then when we knew we had a good position, then we had the outcome where if I made a distinct motion, then Jimmy would make that same distinct motion. So we had this like how we said, like true positives and false negative rate was pretty good.
Have you thought about using sensors for feedback position so that you close the loop on the system so when someone moves, you know how far they've moved?
That's an interesting question. We haven't thought of that. Or if you want to answer.
So the way that you would probably do that is you can adjust that GUI, or not the GUI, the trigger to be more like a gradual trigger, and then transfer the the manual adjustment of the dials to strength of the incoming signal. But we didn't want to do that because essentially the upper limit would we'd have to increase the upper limit to allow for a lot more drastic movements, which would not be too comfortable.
But this is very interesting question you asked. My area of expertise is in control systems. Obviously, you're right. We can do this tracking very nicely, but this needs some extra work for that. So they just wanted to prove the concept of motion from one person to another in an open loop type of fashion. Okay, we have one more question.
My question is that what I saw in the demonstration, you did that real time online, right? And you made a video. But my question is that can you restore the old data you received from first person and then apply to another person that to see if it works or not?
So you can we can artificially cause triggers. That's not something that we showed, but with I guess it's more like a debug console, I guess. But you can artificially recreate this routine that we did. It's just that that wasn't particularly interesting because this is kind of a fun demonstration that we wanted to show. So.
I just would like to comment that there is one technology that maybe we can do this kind of devices, which is tiny ML, that should be really nice. The problem there is maybe you have to reduce the voltage that you are going to use in the device. So my point is, what is the voltage that are you using?
So everything right here is being run off, I think, 9 volts DC, and the way that you have to trigger the muscle is through pulses. So I think it's at 60 hertz at a spike of 20 volts. I think that's correct. So that's pretty low voltage, but it needs to be able to. We need to be able to send some kind of like pulse signal.
So my last question is, can we extend this interesting research to kind of help people with can we extend your research so we help people with some sort of disability kind of have difficulty moving their arms?
So it depends on what kind of disability. So if it's major nerve damage, then it's going to be hard to stimulate the nerves because they're going to be severed, and I don't think artificial stimulation is going to help. But I think that's more of a question on the medical side, and our expert on medical knowledge, Aaron, is not here with us today. So
if someone has difficulty, I have a difficulty moving their fingers, can this help because it's a voluntary action?
I think it depends on the specific problem that they have, but in certain situations, yes, I believe this will probably help.
Thank you, guys.
However, before I was so impressed with this work that I decided and I accept responsibility to provide. I hope there was no time to discuss this with the steering committee, but one of them happened to be the referee of this paper and was impressed here. We decided, I decided, I hope they agree, to present an award for the medical devices section of the conference to the team here. Congratulations. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you. Very proud of you.
Okay, next topic is asymmetric, non-negative matrix factorization. I call it image reconstruction. One and